All right, we'll go ahead and get started. Hello, my name is Nova Amin. I am a library instructor and research specialist at the Plano Public Libraries. Welcome, everyone, to the program called WaterWise. I'm going to give a brief introduction to our guest who is presenting today's program. Katie Masucci Walker is a senior environmental education coordinator at the City of Plano's Sustainability and Environmental Education Division. She loves teaching residents about water conservation, efficiency, and quality in creative ways. In fact, she's even known to write and perform musical parodies that promote sustainable behaviors. Katie plays and coaches ice hockey, proving that water in liquid or solid form is a huge part of her life. Otherwise, this new master gardener can be found creating and enjoying her own water-wise landscape with her husband and beautifying their new home. With that, I'll go ahead and let Katie take it away.
Thank you, Nova. I appreciate the introduction. It is a pleasure to be with you all today. I am going to attempt to share my screen. Let's see. All right, are y'all able to see my opening slide?
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Well, again, I'm so glad you are joining me today for how to create a water-wise landscape. Again, my name is Katie Masucci Walker, and I am a senior environmental education coordinator for the city of Plano, and someone who grew up in Plano and loves this city very much. And I think you're in for a treat today. We've got lots of beautiful pictures of water-wise landscape to share with you. So I am your water wizard, and I have a few topics that I want to cover today. First, I'm going to be covering why it's important to create a water-wise landscape in Plano and elsewhere, the very important problems that we can tackle with water-wise landscapes. Then I'll talk about water-wise plants and practices that you can incorporate into your landscape to make it a greener and cleaner and more inviting place overall. And finally, I'm going to give you a preview of our upcoming WaterWise landscape tour that will be held on Saturday, October 22nd. And I'll wrap up with some resources to help you continue your education on this topic. So, part one, why should you create a WaterWise landscape? Well, there are a number of reasons. One of those is that our water provider, the North Texas Municipal Water District, today serves 2 million people across 10 counties in North Texas. But our region, or their service area, is expected to double in population size by 2050. I'm sure you've all taken note of increased traffic, all of the home building. It truly is a sprawling and booming region, and that takes a toll on our water supply and their planning. Concurrently, drought conditions are ongoing. Our soil moisture level is truly lacking and has been for most of this year, and reservoir levels are expected to continue to drop. This could be challenging as we enter next year, and especially into next year's hot and dry summer season. So much so that there's talk of drought stages in terms of watering restrictions being enacted. We don't know yet what will happen, but it's likely that our struggle will continue. So with more of these, more suburban sprawl, more homes and more yards, and more toilet flushes, showers, indoor water use, but most importantly, more of these sprinklers, we're really in for some challenges in terms of meeting the growing demand of water in our region. The really sad and frightening part is that as much as half of the water that we apply to our yards with sprinklers is wasted due to inefficient methods and systems, or parts and practices, as I say. So I think that with just a few minor tweaks, we can do substantially better. A lot of the problems stems from watering at the wrong time of day. If you look at that clock on the screen, it says just after noon. We shouldn't be watering at that time. That's the hottest time of day, and further into the afternoon as well. So watering before 10 a.m. and after 6 p.m. is really your best practice in terms of when to be doing your watering. Watering for too long is another very common issue that we see in Plano and beyond. Folks simply overestimate their run times and how much water their soil can absorb at a time. So we often see a lot of water just running off the yard, down the street, and into our storm drains as a result of watering for far too long. And finally, watering with broken sprinkler heads. This is one broken sprinkler head, more of a geyser. And just one of those in an irrigation season or 6 months can waste 25,000 gallons of water. This happened in my former home in North Dallas. I was leaving my neighborhood and just happened to see this in the HOA next to my neighborhood. And I thought, oh, goodness, I hope they're able to fix that quickly because that could mean very high water bills. And so all that being said, we often drastically underestimate the cost of outdoor water use, the cost of our sprinklers until that high water bill comes, and it can be a shock. But there are ways to avoid those sky-high water bills, again, with just some simple tweaks to actions and with the right plants for our region. But also another reason why it's important to have a water-wise landscape is because pollinators desperately need our help. They need our support. Their habitat is disappearing at an alarming rate, and it's truly up to us to provide those plants that are food, places for them to raise their young, and so on. The monarch butterfly, which you can see on the right-hand side of the screen, was just added to the endangered species list a little earlier this year. And that's terrifying and saddening. But together, if we take action, we can provide the habitat that they need to thrive. So what are those plants in practice that encompass a water-wise landscape? Well, what do you even think of when you hear water-wise landscape? Feel free to jump into the chat if you have thoughts to share. But a lot of folks, when they hear the terms water-wise or xeriscape, for example, they think of something like this: rocks, cacti, very few plant choices, just a very sparse desert-like landscape. So this is a common vision when folks hear us or local horticulturalists talk about water-wise, but indeed, that's not the case. Hardscapes can be great. They can be a wonderful feature in a water-wise landscape, but we have more plant choices in North Texas than you may have ever imagined. And that's partially what I want to do today, is open your eyes to those choices that you have that can be both beautiful and sustainable. So for example, this is a water-wise landscape in Plano. Just look at the amount of color and texture. And the icing on top of the cake is that these plants thrived throughout the summer and the heat and the drought. So there are plants that meet your taste, whatever that might be, that do very well here. This too is a water-wise landscape. This one just happens to be under the shade of mature trees, which are more and more common in Plano as our neighborhoods age. So there are water-wise landscapes for sun, shade, and everywhere in between. Speaking of that, here is a water-wise landscape on the left that features just a pathway into the backyard. So your landscape doesn't have to be huge. It can be a portion of your yard. Now on the right, I put this in here. This is actually my mom, and she has a very water-wise Plano landscape, but hers is tiny. It's in a 0-lot line neighborhood. So no matter the size of your yard, you too can grow flowers, vegetables, fruits, beautiful plants that can be sustained in our very dramatic climate. So before I move on, I wanted to see if you had any introductory questions so far. I will have more opportunities for questions as we get into the more nitty-gritty of my topic, but anything so far?
Like there aren't any comments yet.
Okay, well, please, if you think of anything along the way, comments, questions, whatever it may be, please don't hesitate to use that chat. And thank you, Nova, for the update. I will keep on rolling. So there are 9 water-wise practices that I want to touch on today. And all of these together, or maybe some of them, can help your landscape thrive. Most importantly, and probably most neglected, is to test and prepare the soil. We can't forget about our soil if we want to have a healthy and water-wise landscape. Choose native and adapted plants when it's time to do your designing or your shopping for your landscape. Then, after you've chosen those native and adapted plants, make sure that the right plant goes in the right place. We want to reduce our turf areas because grass is very thirsty. It's probably the most thirsty of any plant material that we could have. We want to be generous with our use of compost and mulch. We want to water for the weather and definitely let the weather dictate our watering and not do any more than that. Then we want to cycle and soak when it comes to our watering as well to increase absorption. If possible, we want to harvest rainwater. And finally, we want to be patient and present in our landscape. This is something that's very difficult for me right now with almost a blank palette and so many ideas. But let's start at the basics, testing and preparing our soil. How often have you gone to the nursery or the big box store and purchased fertilizer just because you thought it was time to do so? Well, fertilizer is intended to supplement nutrients that are missing or limited in your soil. So my follow-up question to you then is, how well do you know your soil? Do you know what nutrients are missing or limited? So therefore, do you even know what fertilizer will help and what fertilizer may simply go to waste or worse, hurt your landscape or the environment around? So the best thing that you can do is be an informed and responsible buyer. Test your soil through Texas A&M AgriLife. You can actually go to the website on the screen, soiltesting.tamu.edu. Discover how to collect and submit your soil samples to their lab, and they will reply back to you with a detailed report of what's missing, what's lacking in your soil, and recommendations on how to best treat it to make those new plants that you'll be adding thrive. When you know which nutrients are lacking before you buy and apply, again, you're making a more educated guess on what your landscape needs. Typically in North Texas, we're lacking in nitrogen and we have plenty of potassium. So when you're buying your fertilizer, it may be overkill to apply additional potassium, as an example. When you go to your favorite nursery or big box store and you're asking the associate for recommendations, do so based on the information that you glean from your soil test results. And I can almost guarantee that the results that you'll see in the landscape will be much better and healthier. Think of our Texas clay soil like a stack of paper plates. What happens when you pour water over them? The water doesn't necessarily go directly through. It's more likely to travel across the surface and over the edges, so on the side. And it can be very hard to get to the water that's between those plates. Our clay soil is very similar to this situation. And our goal then is to improve the porosity of our soil to allow all of the organic material, plant roots, water, to allow all of those good things in. A good rule of thumb is not to work the soil when it's wet, or of course, drive on it or extensively walk on it. We don't want heavy foot traffic either. Because we want to improve the porosity and reduce the compaction, we want to try not to do anything that would further compact our soil. Moving on to native and adapted plant choices like coneflower. This is one of my favorites. This is a Texas tough plant that thrives in our region with less water and care than alternatives that aren't native or adapted to our region. So this is just one of many beautiful, great choices for our landscape. This particular plant thrives in the sun. Now, if you're wondering, well, what plants are native and adapted? How do I even choose? We have a terrific resource for you. It's called Texas Smartscape, and it's an online database of native and adapted plants that have been vetted by horticulturalists in our North Texas region. And they have been shown to thrive with, again, less water and less care than their non-native, non-adapted alternatives. So when you visit txsmartscape.com, you'll see a series of tiles that you can click on. The one on the far left, Search Plant Database, will probably be a great starting point for you. From there, you can search for plants based on your color preferences. You can search for plants that thrive in sun, shade, and everywhere in between. It's just a wonderful tool that you can trust and that you can spend a lot of time just enjoying yourself looking for those plants. Then we ask that you plan your project. Consider your family's priorities and budget. Do you need some turf for your pets to run around, or maybe your kids to enjoy, kicking the soccer ball, for example? Or do you want no turf at all? Are you over mowing? What is your plan? What is your priority for your landscape? Do you like flowers? Do you like raised vegetable beds? Take some time to think about what it is you're after. And then likewise, take some time to think about how much money you're willing to devote now or perhaps over time. You'll hear me talk later about how this can be done in phases, and you might only have funds right now for one particular area of your landscape. That is okay. This does not happen overnight. It may take many years for you to be able to, one, afford to make a drastic change, or it may just take the time to do it. We also ask that you heed the plant label. When you're purchasing your plants, make sure that you space them according to their mature size, not the size they are right now. For example, I just bought a series of abelias, which are evergreen shrubs, for my front shade yard. And I wanted to make sure that I left plenty of room for them to grow to about 3 feet wide. Right now, they're not even quite 1 foot wide, but they'll get there over time. So doing this will allow them the space to stretch out where they don't have to compete with other plants around, and it will keep the landscape looking fresh and not overgrown. With the right plant, right place comes knowing your area's sun exposure and choosing plants with the appropriate light requirement for your area. Here you see 2 lovely purple examples of Texas tough plants. On the left, you've got Mexican bush sage, which tolerates full sun. And on the right, you have American beautyberry, which tolerates full shade. So this is just an example of how if you have a color that you love, that you really want to feature, regardless of the sun exposure in your area, there's likely a plant that can meet your taste. And then we want to reduce those turf areas if at all possible. Again, turf is very thirsty. You may already be struggling to sustain turf under your mature shade trees, so stop trying so hard. Turf does not like to grow in the shade for the most part. So using an alternative like a beautiful patio or sitting area can be a wonderful, enjoyable, and sustainable way to improve your yard and reduce your water use. This patio was constructed using reclaimed bricks that the homeowner collected all over his travels across Texas, and it turned out just beautiful. Dry creek beds are also an attractive way to reduce your turf and direct drainage. They add great texture. They help direct your eye in the design as well. I have to say that we had some large boulders that we inherited from the previous owner of our home. And we also had gutters that were draining directly into the foundation. So we took those boulders and some river rocks and directed those gutters away from the house by creating a dry creek bed. So another added benefit with the direction of drainage is that you might be helping to protect your home's foundation with better water conveyance. Another way to reduce your turf is to opt for natural pathways that make plant care easier and more accessible. This is a beautiful water-wise landscape that was previously featured on our tour, and they made great use of reduced turf areas with this flagstone pathway. This made it easier to water their containers and the plants in those shaded beds. The homeowners were getting older and they definitely needed ways to get through the yard without going through mulch, without compacting their soil anymore. And this was a very tasteful way to do so. Now, if hardscape truly is your style, then you can go no-mow with a fully hardscape, dry creek bed, native and adapted plants yard like this one. This was another yard that we previously featured on our landscape tour. Now, I think this is a great aesthetic, but it's not for everyone. A lot of folks will opt for more of the rule of thirds, where you'll have a third turf, a third hardscape, and a third native and adapted plant beds. This particular yard went heavier on the hardscape, but they did so in a very tasteful way. The takeaway here is that we always want to use pervious materials or materials that allow the water to seep through. The water is not simply running off the yard at full speed. It is trickling and being absorbed rather than just flying off the yard. So some examples that you see here would be river rock, flagstones, decomposed granite. I particularly love the antique bench that they have featured in their little sitting area. So let's talk compost and mulch. We're going to talk dirt for a little bit. Compost builds strong soil that retains nutrients and water. Anyone out there do composting at home? You can use your homemade compost in your landscape, and that's a wonderful closed loop system that you've created. But you can also purchase high quality compost to treat your landscape. Compost helps maintain a neutral pH in the soil, so it's not too acidic or too basic, and it feeds the life that's just teeming beneath the surface. Hopefully, we have earthworms and microbes, all of these breaking down organic material and continuing to make your soil healthy. Compost helps keep them happy. We want them thriving in your yard. When it comes to adding compost, you want to apply 1 to 3 inches annually, ideally in the spring and fall. And this graphic can help you remember when. So at tax time in the spring, invest in your landscape. And at Halloween, treat your landscape to a dose of compost. Mulch, similarly, is just as important. It insulates plant roots from heat and cold, and it helps reduce soil compaction. So as soon as I planted my new front landscape and my front yard shade beds, those abelias that I mentioned, I let the soil settle for a week or so, and then I added a hearty helping of native hardwood mulch to help insulate the soil and those new delicate plants. Mulch also can provide a barrier against weed growth. I know weeding can be the bane of folks' existence in the yard, so do yourself a favor, apply that mulch, and it will help keep those weeds from even germinating. When it comes to mulch, you can be pretty generous. As my colleague Erin Hoffer, our compost queen, says, don't just add powdered sugar on top of the brownie, go heavy on the frosting, so to speak. Maintain a 2 to 4 inch layer of mulch and keep adding it as needed. It will, of course, break down over time, so it's certainly not a one-time addition. Following the guidance of using compost and mulch will help turn your yard into a hardy sponge, water-absorbing sponge. Later, I'll talk briefly about rainwater harvesting with rain barrels, which is great. However, this is the number one way to absorb all of that water that Mother Nature provides, and your sprinklers, is by turning your yard into a sponge with those great organic additions. We recommend Texas Pure products. It is truly your landscape debris at work. When they pick up the paper bags of landscape waste, it goes to the grind site up in Melissa, Texas, where over time it is transformed into mulch, top dressing, raised bed planting mix, and other wonderful soil amendments that you can then purchase for your yard. You can learn more about it at texaspureproducts.com. You can even order it in bags or in bulk. Next, we are going into watering, and at me, the water wizard, a licensed irrigator, and basically all around water nerd, this is truly my territory. So sprinklers are intended to supplement rainfall, not the other way around. One of the biggest problems that we see in landscapes here in Plano and beyond is folks set their irrigation controllers for the season and then they forget about them. So let's say that we received plentiful rainfall in a given week. We likely don't need to run our sprinklers, and yet we still see those sprinklers going off like clockwork. So your homework is to pay closer attention to the weather and to water accordingly. In the slides that follow, I'll have some tools that can help you do so. We also see folks simply not adhering to their designated watering days, or maybe they simply don't know them. Well, I am here to share those with you today. Your watering days are based on the last digit of your address. So if it is an even number, a 0, 2, 4, 6, or 8, your watering days in the spring and summer are Mondays and or Thursdays. If the last digit of your address is an odd number, a 1, 3, 5, 7, or 9, then your watering days in the spring and summer are Tuesdays and or Fridays. You'll notice that I said and or. This is to say that you don't have to water on both days. It depends again on the weather. So one day of watering may be plenty in a given week. Again, just keep an eye on the forecast. And as mentioned previously, it's important to water before 10 or after 6 to avoid the hottest part of the day when we're more likely to lose the water from evaporation. We want to use this time frame until November begins, or really until freezing weather is in the forecast. At that time, the time frame will simply switch. Then, when freezing weather is likely, we will want to water during the hottest times of day to avoid causing an ice rink on our streets and sidewalks. You can learn more about your watering days anytime at plano.gov/water. And if you need help knowing when to water and when to wait, we strongly advise the use of watermyyard.org. This is a fabulous regional asset that you can subscribe to. And the more information you provide about your various irrigation zones in your yard, the more detailed a weekly recommendation it will tell you. Some weeks I'll get an email saying, you don't need to water this week. Other weeks I'll get an email saying, you need to apply this much water. So it's a great reminder for me to go in and set my controller accordingly. Speaking of watering for the weather, as those temperatures continue to cool off, one thing you can do to save water and reduce the risk of, again, causing an ice rink in your neighborhood is simply leave your controller in the off position in the winter. We would consider that to be Halloween to St. Patrick's Day. Certainly, you can run those sprinklers manually as needed. There have been some very warm winters occasionally in our past and certainly in our future. So that's not to say that you must leave them off. But as a rule of thumb, plants need less water as the temperatures are cooler. Many plants go dormant for the winter. It's okay for your lawn to look a little blonde, for example. So just turn them off and run them manually as temperatures call for it, or when you do your walkthrough to determine if you have any sprinkler problems. Use the cycle and soak method. This is to say that your run times are probably too long. Most people's run times are generally too long. So I'm going to show you some rules of thumb on just how long your run times ought to be, and let me know if they're right now longer or shorter. So if you have traditional spray sprinkler heads that pop up and emit the same pattern the whole time that they're on, those should be running for no more than 8 to 12 minutes max at a time. If you see pooling of water or runoff before 8 minutes, then please, by all means, that is the longest that you should be running your zone. You could turn it off at 6 minutes, for example. Rotor heads, the type that pop up and turn, whether it's in a full circle or a partial circle, those can run a little bit longer since they're not spraying the same area the whole time. They can run for 25 to 30 minutes typically at a time. But again, if you start to see pooling or runoff before 25 minutes, of course, then that's your max time for that zone. What cycle and soak truly means is that we allow our sprinklers to run for just long enough for the yard to be able to absorb that water, and then we wait. We want to give the yard a chance to absorb before our next cycle. So instead of, for example, one 16-minute runtime, you could split your runtime into 2 8-minute cycles. Again, just as an example. When we do this, watering deeply and less frequently, we're actually building hardy, strong roots and encouraging our plants to dig deep into the soil for water. This is good for them and makes them less susceptible to drought conditions and those cold snaps of winter. So when we baby our plants by watering them too often, those roots won't have a chance to truly build that network deep into the soil. So we're doing our plants a disservice if we're watering them too frequently. Next, let's talk rain barrels. A 50-gallon rain barrel, or perhaps two, as you can see in this photo, is a great place to start with rainwater harvesting. Each spring, at least this coming spring, we'll be selling discounted rain barrels and compost bins in a wonderful municipal sale. Do check your water bill. You'll receive an insert when it comes time to place your order for those discounted rain barrels. That said, there are many styles and shapes, and you can purchase them all over the place, whether it's online or at your local nurseries, one that suits your taste. I had to include my mom again. She was my earliest inspiration for wanting to teach and share about rainwater harvesting. She actually has, I believe, 5 rain barrels at this time. These are just 2 of her rain barrels. And you can see they're different size, different shape, different aesthetic. The one on the right, I think, is beautiful, and it's placed in her side yard, which is much more likely to have people enjoying the patio, the seating area there. So it's a nice aesthetic for that space. Some of them aren't quite as pretty, for example, but they do serve a very important purpose. That being said, your rain barrel won't replace irrigation, as some people think, but it will make a dent and it will help you with hand watering. Placing these next to your downspouts and next to your vegetable gardens, for example, can be a great way for you to fill that watering can and easily get it to where it needs to go. Then I want to transition to being present and patient. Make sure that you incorporate a space to relax and enjoy the fruits or vegetables of your labor. Your time in the garden is always time well spent, and sometimes you can get flustered thinking there's so much to do. But if you just take a step back, take a seat, and admire what you've done, you'll get a great sense of satisfaction. Creating a water-wise landscape is a process. As I've mentioned, it may be necessary to break it up into phases based on the amount of time that you have You may be a busy professional, a busy parent or grandparent with minimal time. You may have funds that only can help you with one area of the yard at a time. So go step by step. It's okay to go phase by phase and recognize that as a gardener, you will never be finished. You will always probably want more plants and more space to garden if you've caught the bug like I have. And that's okay. That's the beauty of it, is that there's always a space to do something, always a plant to care for if that's what you love doing. But at the end of the day, the best fertilizer is the gardener's shadow. That's to say that the more time that you spend taking stock of your progress, being engaged, knowing what's happening in the garden, the more likely everything is to thrive. But there will still be maintenance. Certainly, even the most Texas tough plants need a little bit of care, but your sprinklers, don't neglect them. My rule of thumb is to do at least a monthly walkthrough by running each zone long enough just to assess if any sprinkler heads are geysers, if I have broken or missing sprinkler heads. Maybe I have a clogged nozzle or grass that's growing over the head. For example, our St. Augustine turf in the front is notorious for very quickly sending runners over the top of a sprinkler head, making it hard for that head to fully pop up. So doing your walkthrough can help you assess if a sprinkler is misbehaving, and you can usually fix it fairly easily. It may just be a turn of the sprinkler head to get it to face the landscape and not the hardscape. And finally, never stop learning. Again, this is a process and there's always something new to learn. Nova mentioned in my introduction that I am a new master gardener, but that does not mean that I know everything. Far from it. I have much to learn and I will enjoy my future of learning as well. But we at Live Green in Plano have some tremendous resources that I'm going to share in just a little bit to help continue your learning, because in this presentation, I've only scratched the surface of many of these topics. So if you're interested in going more in depth, we do have tools for you. So I wanted to break and see if there are any questions at this point.
There are no comments or questions in the chat.
Okay, well, thank you, Nova, for the update. I'll keep rolling once again, and we will move on to part 3, which is a preview of our upcoming landscape tour and those resources and tools that I was alluding to. So the City of Plano hosts a water-wise landscape tour once every year in the fall. This year's tour will be on Saturday, October 22nd from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. And you can always learn more about it and get updates about it at plano.gov/WWLT. That stands for Water-Wise Landscape Tour. And I wanted to just give you a sense of what it entails and why you should go if water-wise landscaping is of interest to you. Well, first, I wanted to showcase that we have a huge group of friendly and knowledgeable volunteers, and in some cases, even the homeowners, who will be there to answer all of your questions about the landscapes that you're visiting. Most of the volunteers are either City of Plano staff and or Collin County Master Gardeners, and they're just great people who are so ready to help you get started on your water-wise landscape transformation. We also offer detailed plant labels. This is one that you see in the middle of the screen for Mexican mint marigold in full bloom in the fall. The plant labels will tell you what type of sun exposure a particular plant will do well with. It will tell you what pollinators or other wildlife that plant attracts. So they're just great tools so that you don't have to constantly be asking volunteers, what's this plant? What's that plant? You can go to a plant, get the information you need, and then maybe go talk to a volunteer about where they should purchase a plant of interest. So that's a great reason to visit the landscape tour. But I also wanted to share some of the yards and facilities that you can visit. We have 2 homes that we'll be showcasing this year. This is at the Barnes residence, where Laura Barnes is a talented mosaic artist. So a lot of her art adorns her beautiful garden, as you can see on the left. And she also has a passion for pollinators. We actually featured this yard several years ago, and people were leaving in tears of joy because of all of the butterflies that they witnessed. They actually described it as the butterfly house. So we're very pleased to be featuring the Barnes residence once again. Then we'll be featuring the McDowell residence. Here you can see his liatris in full bloom in early October. In fact, Mr. McDowell's house will have a mini tour that he's offering this coming Saturday, October 1st, just so folks can see those beautiful purple blooms. The McDowell residence is a no-mow yard. It's full of native prairie plants and a lot of plants that he has let nature sow on their own. So his has perhaps less structure than a traditional landscape, but still a tremendous amount of beauty with the aesthetic that it is capturing. So you'll be able to see his front and backyard as well. But then we're also showcasing some City of Plano facilities, which is different for us this year. One of those is Heritage Farmstead Museum, which has 3 landscapes for literally the price of one. The tour is free for all stops except Heritage Farmstead, which is offering half-price admission to all tour guests on tour day only, $2.50 per person. And you will get to see all 3 of the landscapes that are run by Collin County Master Gardeners and Collin County Master Naturalists. But that's not all. You can bring a picnic and enjoy the lovely history of the farm. You can see the livestock. My favorite is the trio of ducks that are very vocal and frankly hilarious. I love to see the ducks. But you'll see Pancho the donkey. You'll see potentially lots of chickens, maybe on the loose, maybe in their coop. You'll have to wait and see. But truly a gem and 3 beautiful landscapes, especially the kitchen garden, which is featuring lots of fruits and veggies this fall. We will also be featuring Oak Point Nature and Retreat Center, where you can walk the pleasant permeable pathways and discover drought-tolerant plants like this desert willow, a lovely flowering tree that actually I am trying now in my backyard. You'll see some artemisia, some native grasses, some sages. So another beautiful spot to visit. And you can talk to all of the staff and volunteers about designing and implementing these spaces. Then you can visit Sam Johnson Recreation Center. This is our senior center, and witness the beauty of their totally transformed courtyard garden. In this amazing courtyard, you're going to see some beautiful flowers. Now, this was actually taken in the height of summer, and yet we had all of these flowers just showing off, and of course, the pollinators enjoying them to boot. What's really interesting about this courtyard garden is that while what you see here is just abound with color and texture, you'll actually see what it used to be because there are other plots, other beds that haven't been transformed yet. So you can essentially see the before and the after in one space. So again, if you didn't catch the details in my first slide and now you're enticed to visit and learn from our volunteers and staff, learn from our plant labels and the other excellent resources that we'll be featuring, you can do so on Saturday, October 22nd from 9 to 3. Again, plano.gov/waterwise landscape tour will soon house our official tour map, which you can download and bring with you. It will also soon house a scavenger hunt activity that's great for families on the tour. And if you do the scavenger hunt activity and turn it into us at the end of your tour day, you might win a prize for participating. We'll also have downloadable plant lists of all of the landscapes that are featured. Those will have photos of all the plants that you can then take to your favorite nursery as you do your shopping. I also mentioned that we have some fabulous tools to continue your learning. So Live Green in Plano offers live webinars like this one, but also we record them and make them available after the fact as well. You can see all of those at plano.gov/seed programs and click Learn Online. There you can then go to our webinar channel where you'll see recordings of programs like the Sprinkler Spruce Up series that we do each summer. This is a 3-part series that offers a different topic each part. So there's a part on quick fixes for your sprinklers, a part on DIY drip irrigation, and a part on taking control of your controller, programming your controller. Then you'll find a Rain Barrels 101 presentation, which we offer each spring in conjunction with our Rain Barrel sale. You'll see Garden Green, Keep It Clean, which talks about different practices around the yard that can help protect our water and keep it clean as it enters the water supply. So we talk about things like fertilization, mowing, weeding. We talk about pesticides and insecticides and the use of all of those things in a way that's good for the environment. You'll also see webinars on vegetable gardening, shade gardening, which I know is definitely of interest with those mature trees wreaking havoc on lawns across Plano, and even understanding your water bill. I actually do a webinar each winter time to help people understand how those charges are assessed and actions they can take to help reduce them. And there are many more on other topics like recycling and composting. So we do hope that you will follow us and see those programs. All right, so I believe this is my last opportunity for any comments or questions. Anything out there?
None at this time.
Okay, well, thank you very much again for being my co-pilot today, Nova, and wanted to share just a few more resources that might be helpful to you. These are local trusted resources. We have Texas A&M AgriLife Extension. In fact, if you Google anything Aggie and then turf or Aggie and grubs or Aggie and irrigation, for example, you're likely to get really great information from Texas A&M about that topic that's of interest, or maybe that topic that's stressing you out. For example, I had a chinch bug problem in my St. Augustine turf. So I very quickly located from this webpage that you see on the screen, an excellent St. Augustine turf care guide month by month. So wonderful trusted resources that are research-based there. Similarly, our local chapter, the Collin County Master Gardeners, again, they are a tremendous asset to us in our upcoming landscape tour. I myself am a Collin County Master Gardeners, been through their training course, which was fabulous. And they also offer research-based information to help your landscape thrive and to help you use our most precious water resources as efficiently as possible. So I wanted to share my contact information. If you do think of any comments or questions after we wrap up today, please don't hesitate to contact me. The easiest way to do so is at my email. That's katiem@plano.gov. Or you can give me a call at 972-769-4216 if you have any questions about the topics that I've covered today, or if you have questions about the WaterWise Landscape Tour on October 22nd. So thank you so much for joining me today. I will turn it back over to you, Nova. It was a pleasure to present on behalf of Live Green in Plano for the Plano Public Library. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Katie. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen real quick to provide some upcoming program information. So we have a few events coming up. These are virtual programs that are also presented by the City of Plano Sustainability and Environmental Education Division. On October 13th at 11 a.m., we have Are You a Waste Ace? And then on November 15th at 11 a.m., we have Gardening for Wildlife, Beautify, then Certify Your Yard. And so just like today's program, you would go and register online and then have our next slide. Where you can visit our library website for more information and also our blog, Plano Library Learns. We will have a recording of today's program if you'd like to view it later on our YouTube channel. That's all I have for today. Thank you so much for sharing such wonderful information on just how to garden and how to take care of your yard and how to conserve and save water. So it's all great information. I don't see any questions or comments in our chat. So Katie, if you didn't have anything else to share with us, we'll go ahead and end our presentation for today.
That sounds like a plan. We hope to see you on the Waterwise Landscape Tour on Saturday, October 22nd. Thank you so much for having me today.
All right, thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.